As a doctor is that no one actually believes you are. Even you're still in doubt. I was recently looking at my bank account, and at this point, the only thing I could afford to pay for my sins, and only if they're 50% off. Being unemployed still feels like finding out that the quiet girl in class is pregnant, you know? How? Uzama? How? I thought Mbali would go first. But I'm not like sulky or depressed or anything, you know? Because on the bright side, I'll get to say, I used to be poor, I had nothing. I used to sleep in my car, and it was an A class, not even a C. But I really won't lie, this is probably the toughest time in my life, man. Yo, mentally. And I've seen every rich person talk about when they used to struggle and how it made them stronger, you know? I just feel more hungry. At the same time, I'm motivated to write a book, you know? Like, what would I call it? Like the 5 Cent Club? Or Poor Dad, Poorer Dad? A true rags to rags story? You know, because I sold all the other rags. I could already see the headlines. The New York Times called it a shame. But honestly, I'm not going to lie, this has kind of changed my perspective on life. You know, I used to walk around and look at homeless people and I'm like, you're so lazy, that could never be me. Now I walk around and think to myself, damn, all the good spots are taken. I'm sure people were even shocked seeing doctors strike. We were there with our signs and everyone was confused. After 30 minutes, like, what are they striking for? Luckily, the pharmacists were there to translate. But I'm not even upset at the government. I'm more upset at my biology teacher. She used to say, Given, if you keep on talking in the back, you'll never get a job. Study like Solidus and you'll be employed. Last week, Given got a tender for 2 million.
What a hilarious post, but obviously about a very serious topic in South Africa. Now, over 100 unemployed health graduates marched in Pretoria on Friday in an effort to put pressure on National Treasury. The group wants government to address staff shortages by hiring unemployed doctors, dentists, pharmacists and nurses. The march highlights a deepening crisis of joblessness in South Africa, which stands at 31.9%. I'm joined in studio by Dr. Solidus Nxumalo, and while LLB graduate Ntokozo Masondo joins us via video link. A very good evening to both of you. Thank you so much for joining me in studio and virtually, of course. Dr. Nxumalo, that video is hilarious, right? But it's also quite sad. What you're talking about there is a deep problem. We often talk about the stats of unemployment. But you don't see the faces quite often as well, and you don't expect them to be doctors like yourself.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your journey, what inspired you to study medicine before we get to this reality that you live in.
Okay, so I mean, my name is Solidus, right? I think for me, it's been a very tough time, but most times I've always been one who uses humor in order to cope throughout everything that you're going through, you know? I think even in this period, the reason why I'm still here, you know, is primarily because I'm able to, you know, try and find the joke out of everything, you know. But I would say, in terms of my journey and what's driven me to actually be here right now, can't believe I'm actually on television, it's a very touching story. So when I was around the age of 8 or so, I had a younger sister, and she got quite sickly. So while we were at home, she stopped eating, she felt very warm. And I just remember telling my mother that I think there's something wrong with Lily, you know. And then eventually my mom took my sister to the hospital, and I didn't see her for quite some time. And then she came back very, very late at night. She was crying. And at that time, I knew my mom. My mom isn't someone who cries a lot. I thought to myself, the only 2 things that could possibly make her cry is if she found out that I was getting married to a closer woman, or perhaps if something was wrong with my sister, you know. And that's when it literally sinked in. So the way that this journey started for me, it was, as a child, I thought maybe if I became a doctor, I'd never feel as powerless as I felt that moment when she passed away. So I essentially just wanted to make sure that I could make sure that all the people that I love and the people that I care about could obviously possibly live forever. It was quite naive at the time, but I think that dream transitioned into becoming me, viewing myself as someone who wants to keep his family together, and grew into me becoming someone who wants to make sure that no one ever loses a family member.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that with us, and just, geez, what a touching story and quite sad indeed. And a lot of people, when we talk about medicine, will say they go into the profession because it's a calling, right? It's not about the money. But did you ever anticipate at any point while you were studying and venturing into possibly a life of medical work, did you ever think that there is a chance that you could be unemployed?
Look, the first thing I'd say is my mom doesn't like that word. You know, my mom would always say, "Mtanam, don't call yourself unemployed. You are pre-employed." So she's kept me quite positive, you know. But I think there wasn't really a time. I think also as a child, you don't really think these things through. You know, you just watch Grey's Anatomy and House, and then you start to think to yourself, this actually looks like it's pretty cool. But I won't lie to you and say I'm not surprised, you know, because I think if we look at our predecessors and everyone's had a very straight journey. It's been strict, you know. Besides for these last 3 years, people have just been finishing and then they start working. So for us, it's such a shock because we haven't actually had time to prepare for that, you know. But I did kind of think this would kind of happen, especially when I read the stats that were based on the previous year. For that reason, I started saving up as much as I can, starting to prepare my family also for the time and what was essentially going to happen. But obviously, I hoped it wouldn't happen, but
yeah,
here we are.
Ntokozo, I'd like to bring you in here because when we're talking about traditional career choices that, you know, parents are proud of, become a lawyer, a doctor, and you will secure yourself, you know, a job for the future. You are an LLB graduate. Here you are unemployed, or as Solidus Nxumalo put it, pre-employment. What's the journey been like for you? And did you ever anticipate, having studied an LLB, that you'd find yourself in this predicament and this position of being unemployed?
Well, thanks for having me. I never thought of being unemployed after my studies, but here we are, and I am unemployed, and it does not sit well with me. But maybe it will be the long story if I share my inspirations on how did I get to the legal space and stuff. But what this unemployment has led me to is to the space of saying, no, we need to do something. Now that we are here, we are unemployed as graduates from different professions, not only as law graduates. We need to do something. And here you are talking to me as a graduate, but in an activism space, in my activism life, I am the organizer of the unemployed graduates. And the vision is to bring together all the unemployed from across the professions, the doctors, the education space, engineers, to say, guys, here we are in a space where we never thought we would be. What needs to be done next? We see doctors like Dr. Nxumalo we are having here. We have seen here in KZN in Maritzburg, we have seen lots of teachers, social workers marching. Then we thought, no, let us not do this in silos. Let us do this thing collectively as the graduates, because you are talking to me today as unemployed, a law under the law profession, but there are others who are not here. What are we saying about them? Hence, we came with this idea of organizing ourselves to say something needs to be done. It can take much of your time if we can go to the reasons why are we having unemployed graduates having so much a percentage in an unemployment statistics of South Africa. So really, we exist solely on that to say we need to do something, we need to come together, we need to demand answers and actually demand the employment from the authorities, the government. Because if you ask about myself, how did I get here? In my previous life, I'm from the student activism, student leadership, university. We started back in those times. We thought we will finish our qualifications and go work. But after I graduated, I have seen meeting students whom we assisted to access education when we were still in student leadership. And when you come across those students, they ask you, how, Chief, we are here, we are still unemployed, can you do something for us? Then I thought, no, whatever we're fighting for back in varsity, it was never a mission accomplished upon our graduation. We still need to go on now to fight for employment. And that's when we then thought, let us come back to the struggle and take the struggle on, not at the level of fighting to enter the education space, but now we are fighting to enter the employment space.
And that's a valid point that you're making there, Ntokozo, because there was this, fight to make sure that particularly the black child does get an adequate and quality education. And now we're sitting in a scenario where we've got people who are unemployed. Now, in one of your videos as well, Solidus, you mentioned, and in a joking way as well, because, you use humor as well, that people don't expect it to be that girl in the class who perhaps, in the analogy, falls pregnant. People don't expect it to be the LLB graduate. They don't expect it to be the doctor who struggles with unemployment. What kind of toll does it have on one emotionally and mentally?
I think it's been a very difficult time, It takes a lot for me. I think in the words of the wise urban poet, DJ Khaled, we're depressed. And it's been quite a lot. I think not just on me. I'd always say, when you're seeing, I can only speak in the context of doctors, when you're seeing a young unemployed doctor, keeping in mind that the majority of us, especially, we come from certain upbringings. For myself, I'm from Newzroom, which is a very small town. And essentially, when you see an unemployed graduate, you're not just seeing him or her. You're essentially seeing an entire family that's reliant on that person, And I think for most people, people can relate in terms of studying through university and having money, like from NSFAS and so on, and having to send money home in order to help out. So a lot of people start providing at such a young age, especially because if we're the first ones in our families to actually go out there and actually, go to college, go to university and so on. And it's so tiring, because the journey that we've seen for people around us, it's been one, sure, it might be that they never had the opportunities that we had. And nonetheless, I'm also very grateful to my family, to the community and everyone who's kind of made me who I am today. And they might not be able to fully understand it, but there's still that thing inside of you where you feel like you've got the entire world on your shoulders. And it's so difficult, because even for them, it's difficult to understand. But for anyone else who's outside who's watching, it's just a thing of, they talk to you once in a while about, the fact that you're unemployed and you're not working. But you're the one who actually has to live through it,
Yeah.
So it's a lot. It's very, very difficult. And I think if I were to time travel and talk to myself when I was a child and tell that person, and they ask me, so, what do you do, with your day? And I just wake up in the morning, I play FIFA until I start losing, and then I give up, They'd probably say, that sounds like a dream, But as an adult, it's so difficult with all the pressures and all the expectations to feel like you're failing each and every day.
And speaking of the pressures as well, there's also societal pressures that one feels as well. There's also the need, natural comparison as well. And one of those posts on your social media on TikTok, you make mention of, studying hard, getting those A's, 6 or 7 A's, to make sure that you get into medical school. And then next thing, you're watching the guy who didn't really do so well in class, getting that tender and becoming a millionaire.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that kind of dynamic as well, when you're looking at your peers who are also progressing.
I'd honestly say, it feels like a kick in the face, I guess, in a sense, because you grow up being told that you have to work hard, and if you really, really do work hard, you'll actually make it, And it's funny, because you grow up and you realize most things are based on who you know. And I think for me, it's been very difficult. I was even having a conversation with my friend, Dr. Nxumalo, and he's got aspirations of becoming a neurosurgeon, you know. And the conversation for the very first time, since I've always known him, he's been someone who's always on saying, look, I'm going to be the best neurosurgeon in the world. You know, this is what I'm going to do. You know, everything's going to work out according to plans. You know, the conversation we had last week, for the first time, I heard a very different tone. You know, him saying, oh, man, look, I've just been looking at everyone around me, and oh, my seniors are like waiting more than 10 years to get a job. You know, what's the point? I might as well just like start living my life, you know. And it's so difficult. Like, you have a dream and you're working very hard. And for me, it's so tricky because I've just gotten to a point where I'm still working hard, you know, and it kind of feels like it's insanity, as Einstein would define it. You're trying to kick down this door, and you're doing it in the very same way that you think it should happen. But the more that you try and kick down this door, you realize that like the door's closed, you know. And they say sometimes a window opens, and then the next thing you look outside the window, and it turns out you're on the Titanic and you can't swim.
Sure.
You know. So it feels like just everything is difficult, and it feels like the world is really against you. And I guess if all that you know is hard work, you hope that all you can actually do is just keep on working hard. And I would honestly hope that our journeys don't end up being different from that, you know, proving that, I guess, that notion that hard work doesn't actually always get you there. It would pain me to have to be anything else but a surgeon.
It would pain a lot of people to know that there are people who can become surgeons and are taking a different path, knowing that we need as many surgeons. Just quickly in closing, Ntokozo, just if you can just tell us, you know, you're talking about forcing authorities as well to make sure that they do employ graduates, not only in your field, but other fields as well. What kind of response are you getting?
It is very painful, my sister, because we live in a country where those in power really do not care what us on the ground are faced with. They are essentially the sources of our problems. We see marches day in, day out, but the response is not there. That is why we are calling for a more tense action, mass action to be taken or to be demonstrated to the authorities, to say, because clearly you will march, you will hand over your memorandum, they will sign, and it will end there. Come the budget speech on the 12th, you will still see these austerity budget cuts, which are the root cause of this unemployment that we are faced with. We therefore need to up our game in terms of not only marching and handing over memorandums, but we need to sit down and find a strongest way to send the message to the authorities to say, now we need to demand our right to work, because clearly they are not year in, year out. Every time you listen to the treasurer or the minister of finance, you will experience the cuts in various departments.
Yeah.
And with those cuts, what job opportunities do you expect to be created?
Yeah.
There will be no job opportunities. Then to be marching on something which you can see the source that is breeding this crisis is a waste of energy. You rather have to find another strategic way to make your voice to be heard.
Yeah. Ntokozo, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time joining us there via a video link. And to you, Dr. Solidus Nxumalo, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your stories with us. And I truly hope both of you find good employment soon, and of course for your peers who are also unemployed.